G'day everyone, and welcome to exercise number 10. So you're back here again with Nate and my boy Harrison, who is behind the camera. Today we are going to look at the muscles that act on the lower extremity. So to start off with, we're going to look at the posterior muscles, and we're going to start off with part number 4 of the exercise, specifically looking at the gluteus muscles. The gluteus muscles are the ones that are responsible for abduction of your hip. So basically abduction would be abducting your hip out like that. So the first one that you can see is the largest muscle, also known as like the main booty muscle. So the gluteus maximus is this very large superficial muscle that you can see. If we fold this back, we now get down to the intermediate muscle, which is the gluteus medius, which is this muscle right here. If we fold this one back and we get to the most deep muscle in the group, we get to the gluteus minimus muscle. The gluteus minimus muscle is this deep muscle right here. So the next one you need to know is your iliopsoas muscle. Your iliopsoas muscle is composed of 2 muscles, that being your psoas major and your iliacus muscle, hence the name iliopsoas. It just takes the names of the 2 and merges them together. These muscles are responsible for flexion of your thigh or flexion at your hip. You can find these muscles inside the abdominal cavity. So basically the way you do this is you move all the abdominal viscera and everything out of the way. You'd move the small and large intestine out of the way. And then in this compartment, what you can see is this large broad muscle that sticks out. This would be your psoas major. And then your iliacus would be this muscle that sits inside that iliac crest. So iliacus, psoas major, together, these muscles form the iliopsoas. The sartorius muscle is this very long muscle here that is most superficial. This muscle starts off laterally, and as you move further down the femur, you can see that it's going to move medially and insert after the knee. So this muscle crosses both the hip joint and the knee joint. The sartorius is the longest muscle in the body. The adductor femoris group are responsible for adduction of your thigh. So essentially basically bringing your leg from abduction out back in towards your anatomical plane or anatomical position. This group is composed of 3 muscles. That is your adductor brevis, adductor longus, and adductor magnus. So these 3 muscles make up the group. You don't need to know how to identify each one on the cadaver, just know how to find the group itself. The way you can find these is on the anterior side, and if we're working slightly medially, there's this large group of muscles between the sartorius and the gracilis, and you can grab and palpate these large groups of muscles, and that would be your adductor femoris group. So the next one you need to know is the pectineus muscle. The pectineus muscle derives the name pectineus, the peak. The way you can find this muscle is it's going to be more proximal to your hip joint. So if you find this femoral artery and you move slightly medial, in this compartment here, slightly deep, you can see this muscle in here, and that would be your pectineus muscle. We also have our gracilis muscle. Our gracilis muscle you can find on the femur or the thigh most medially. It's the most superficial muscle on the medial compartment, and it would be this large muscle right here. So now we are looking at our quadriceps group. Our quadriceps are the muscle that are responsible for extension of our knee, and quadriceps group has 4 muscles in it, hence the name quads 4. So to start off with, the first muscle you can see is the most superficial muscle here on your femur. So the one I'm holding up now and running this probe along, that will be your rectus femoris muscle. Next, we move laterally the first thing we do is we move this sheet out of the way, or this band. This is your IT band or your iliotibial band. And then we can see this most lateral muscle. This muscle is going to be your vastus lateralis. If we move more medial and we fold the rectus femoris to the side, the muscle that sits deep to the rectus femoris that has this slightly membranous tissue over it, this is your vastus intermedius muscle. Lastly, we have our vastus medialis muscle. So again, if we move more medially now, this muscle here between the rectus femoris and the sartorius is going to be our vastus medialis. These four muscles, the rectus femoris, the vastus lateralis, the vastus intermedius, and the vastus medialis, all converge together onto basically the common patella tendon. And this is where we have our patella. And then these four muscles converge and all insert onto that tibial tuberosity. On the posterior side here, we have our hamstring group. Our hamstring group is composed of three muscles that you need to know. That is your rectus femoris muscle, your semitendinosus muscle, and your semimembranosus muscle. So the way I like to do this personally is I start off most laterally. The first muscle that you're going to find will be this muscle here. And you can see that again, a bicep muscle has two heads, and you can very clearly see those two distinct heads associated with this muscle. So this would be your bicep femoris. So the next muscle we have medially is the semitendinosus muscle, which is this one here. The name, it derives the name from the fact semitendinosus, it has a very long tendon associated with it, which you can see here on this medial side. Fun fact, the semitendinosus muscle we've actually commonly used with ACL repairs. So they'll use this tendon to repair a torn ACL. And then most medially, we have the semimembranosus muscle, which is this large one here. It derives the name membranosus because you can see that very large tendinous or that aponeurosis membrane associated with it. These three muscles together are going to be responsible for that flexion of your knee. So on the anterior side, we have one muscle associated with ankle movement that you need to know. That muscle is your tibialis anterior. You can find that tibialis anterior here by finding your tibia, which is this really large bone, and then moving slightly lateral. You can see this large muscle right here, and that would be your tibialis anterior, and that muscle is responsible for dorsiflexion of your foot. So now we are looking at the posterior side, and we are looking specifically at the muscles associated with ankle movement. So on the posterior side, there are two muscles that you can see. The large, most superficial muscle here that forms your calf muscle essentially is your gastrocnemius. The gastrocnemius is basically one of the principal muscles responsible for that plantar flexion. And then just deep to the gastrocnemius, so this muscle here is your soleus muscle. Again, that muscle also helps with plantar flexion. And then what happens is these muscles converge onto that common calcaneal tendon or your Achilles tendon, and then they insert into that calcaneus just down here on your foot. Thanks guys for watching. This sums up all of the muscles for Unit 2. We will see you guys with more videos for Unit number 3 when we jump into the special senses and the brain. There you go. G'day, mate.